Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alex Radford. I'm a English solicitor and Spanish lawyer with my law in Spain, and I'm joined on the call today with my colleagues Isabel. Say hello, Isabel.
No.
And Patricia. Where's Patricia? There's Patricia. Hi there. So today we're going to be talking you through the buying legal process, and we're joined by a UK estate agent. I'll introduce you to him shortly. We'll be talking about the buying legal process. So just to let you know, as far as where we are at the moment on lockdown, Malaga province, our head office is based in Marbella. We have now moved to phase 1, so we've got a bit more freedom. We're allowed to go out, see up to 10 friends. We're allowed to go to bars and restaurants. The terraces are open, but the interiors of bars and restaurants aren't open yet. And our exercise is limited to between 6 and 10, and then from 8 to 10 at night, and then younger people can go out between 12 and 8, and elderly people between 10 and 12. So those time scales, so the timetables are still in place. We believe that and hope that Malaga province and other provinces in Andalusia will go to phase 2 next week, which means we'll then have a lot more freedoms. And there's quite a few of the Canary Islands are moving now to phase 2 because they've got less of the spread of the virus. So basically, buying property in Spain and the legal process, that's what we're talking about, what you need to do, what your lawyer needs to do, and we'll also talk about how a property purchase in Spain differs from the UK and the steps you and your lawyer need to take to ensure a smooth transaction. We're joined by David Jackson, Managing Director of Jackson Grundy in Spain and the UK. David, welcome and thank you for joining us. Tell us about yourself and how long you've been involved in the real estate business and what brought you to Spain.
Thank you, Alex, and hello to everybody. Well, taking you back, we opened up 26 years ago in England. Had an idea one day and just kind of went for it. And so the company's now 26 years old. We have 10 residential sales branches in England and 3 lettings branches and quite a big financial services arm. I've owned a house in Spain for probably 18 years, and it seemed a natural thing to do. So 5 years ago, we opened one branch in Centro Plazo and then another one opposite La Sala. And that was 5 years ago. So it's been a roller coaster. We finally thought we'd seen the back of Brexit, and now here we are with a virus. But no regrets, Alex. It's been good.
Excellent. And so last week, David, estate agents in the UK were allowed to open, and also in Spain. Have you opened, and how has business been?
Yeah, it was a strange one because we closed all our branches, I think, on the 22nd of March, so the day before the UK went into lockdown, because we could see it was coming. And then throughout, so I mean, they've got a very good furloughing scheme here. So we furloughed probably 70% of the staff. We kept the lettings business up and running because we had to, because that's a day-to-day thing with paying people and repairs. So we were allowed to keep that open. And we were gearing up to return on the 1st of June because we were told we were going to be lumped in with retail. So I actually called all the staff last week, Monday, Tuesday, spent 2 whole days on the phone saying we're coming back on the 1st of June. And then dear old Boris on Tuesday night told us we could go back at 8 o'clock on Wednesday morning. So a little bit short notice, but we did reopen. We reopened them all on Monday. Limited staff, so we probably brought back 50% of the staff. Gloves, face masks, sanitizers. The doors are locked. It's appointment only. We've been told to only really value. We'll put it this way: we're a lot more selective. So if somebody calls and wants a valuation, we're allowed to do it. But we're a lot more thorough with the questions that we're asking. Are you looking to move? Is it essential that you're moving? Because what I don't want to do is send the staff out to someone who just wants an idea on what their house is worth. And very, very similar with viewings as well, because I think people have been indoors for so long. The first day we had people, oh, can I have a look at that? Can I have a look at that? Almost as though it was their day out. So again, we're being very selective and we're only doing viewings that are absolutely essential. And there's a massive issue at the moment with lending, because at the start of the year it was 90%, 95%. Now they've just got back up to 85%. There's talk they might get back up to 90%. So we're having to qualify people a lot more, because they automatically assume they can borrow a higher percentage. So it's interesting. It's but I think that pent up demand was there. How it will continue in June, I don't know, because as I've already said, the UK is a strange place at the moment, because 50% of the people seem to be in lockdown, and 50% are going back to work and carrying on as normal. So it's a bit of a surreal place to be at the moment, as I'm sure Spain is.
Yeah, absolutely. It's strange times, and we'll be going back to abnormal, and that will become the new normality when we're out of all these phases in Spain, and then of course when you've come out of lockdown in the UK. So and how do you see the market, David? Do you see you've got your foot in both camps? So Spain and the UK. Do you think prices will come down because potentially after this awful health crisis, we might have an awful financial crisis, and people lose their jobs, so that might affect their ability to pay mortgage, and houses might get repossessed, etc. So that might bring prices down, because there'll be a lot more property in the market. Can you see that happening, or are you a bit more?
I'm a little bit more bullish. It's a very difficult one to answer, isn't it? I mean, the economy was going really, really well, particularly in the UK. After 3 years of uncertainty because of Brexit, we seemed to be finally released, and it was going really, really well. Will there be a quick bounce back? I'm not a scientist, but a lot of it depends on a vaccine, doesn't it? If we get a vaccine, I think the bounce back will be quite quick. If I'm honest, if we don't, we could be living with social distancing for 9 months, 12 months, 18 months, and then I think it'll be a lot slower. Particularly if air travel is restricted, and even if it isn't, there'll be a lot of people that are very nervous about getting on an aeroplane at the moment. So yeah. I don't think the prices will drop in the UK, if I'm honest, because there's still a shortage of houses. But you've probably got people there that would have a far better expert opinion, probably on Spain than myself. But I think the vaccine and people flying and feeling more relaxed is very important to Spain, because again, the Spanish market's been very good recently, hasn't it? And you certainly hope there isn't another dip. I don't think there will be. I just think it will take a little bit of time to come back up again.
And those property sales and purchases that you had ongoing, have people pulled out, or are they still kind of carrying on with those sales? No,
in the UK, for example, we probably sell about 130 houses a month, so it's volume. And we probably lost about 10% of those during lockdown. People just changing their mind. The rest were really, really keen. And the sales we had going through in Spain, nothing is cancelled. So it's been. I think people still want to do this, don't they? Whether more cancellations will come out when people realise they haven't got a job, etc., etc. I don't know, Alex, but it hasn't been as bad as some media outlets would report it.
Well, that's good news. That's good news. So, David, you've gone through the buying process in Spain, the UK, and also, as an estate agent, acted in both camps. What would you say are the kind of main differences, being an agent in the UK compared to Spain?
I actually, in many ways, I actually prefer the Spanish system. It is more expensive to buy a house in Spain, legal fees, etc., etc. But the fact that you have to put a deposit down straight away, unless anything legal crops up, there's a lot more certainty in the Spanish market than what there is in the UK. I mean, to give you an example, in the UK, let's just say we sell 100 houses in a week. I know that within 8 weeks, 20% of those would have cancelled for no reason. People just phoning up and changing their mind, because there's no financial commitment at the early stage in the UK. Whereas in Spain, it seems a lot more stable.
Okay.
So I think.
No, interesting. Just to clarify on that, legal fees are probably comparable to the UK, but what's different here is the transfer taxes. That makes it more expensive. Yeah.
Yeah. I apologise, Alex. And in fact, estate agents are a lot more expensive in Spain than they are in England. So I'll put us into that camp as well.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so now we're going to be basically talking. We've got Patricia and Isabel from Milo and Spain on the call, and we're going to be talking everyone through the actual buying process, and then we've got some questions towards the end. And we're kind of breaking the buying process down to finding a property, the conveyancing, and then completion. Isabel, do you want to start us off with the finding of property position,
Yes,
please?
of course. Well, welcome everyone. Yeah, the first stage is when you find the property, the buyer makes the offer is accepted. The offer is usually made through the estate agent. And that point there is need to sign the reservation contract. The reservation contract will include the main terms and conditions, such as the price, such as the payment schedule, the completion deadline, and any specific condition that the parties may agree to. So, for example, whether the property is going to be sold with furniture, if there is going to be any specific condition, like, for example, the survey being satisfactory, or whether, of course, will have to be subject to the property legalities and the planning situation. So this is the typical reservation contract that the lawyers will draft, and it is essential to reflect these main terms here. Normally, the reservation deposit will be between 3,000 and 6,000 euros, and it will be paid upon signing this contract. It is important to say, as David was mentioning, that the deposit can be lost if the buyers decide not to go ahead, unless there is a reason based on the conditions which were agreed. And once the contract has been signed, the buyer lawyer will start with the searches, which would be the next stage. But at this first stage, there will be also the power of attorney to be drafted for the buyers to authorize the lawyers to sign, to complete, to make any arrangements on their behalf. The power of attorney has to be signed at the notary office, either in the UK, any country, or in Spain. We usually recommend signing it in Spain if possible, as it is more straightforward, apart from the fact that the buyer would normally save some cost doing it in Spain if possible. But if it is not possible, then it can be signed abroad. So, for example, during the lockdown, we have had clients who were in the process of buying. They were at this earlier stage, and we have had the power of attorney organized in the country where they were based. It has taken a little longer than usual, but it has been possible, and we have achieved that. Having a power of attorney would imply that the buyers would not need to come personally on completion date. So this is strongly advisable, and it is the common practice. Finally, to mention that at this first stage, it would be also possible to open the bank account for the clients, for the buyers in Spain, although this is not necessary, as the lawyers would normally offer the lawyers' clients' account for the clients to put the funds for completion and, the initial costs. So really the bank account would be necessary, would be essential for completion purposes, not before. Some clients would prefer to have it earlier because they prefer to start transferring funds. They may feel more comfortable, or they may want to transfer funds much in advance to take some advantage of the exchange rates and so, but it is not necessary, and there is the disadvantage that the banks in Spain would normally charge some maintenance fee, so in the region of 30 euros quarterly fee, more or less. Therefore, some of the buyers would prefer just to hold until they're nearer to completion, and at that point they can have the bank account opened for the purposes of completing and setting up the utilities and other services. This would be, in my view, the main questions related to this first stage. So next stage, my colleague Patricia would be giving you the key questions.
And Patricia, just before you come on to that, we've had a question through, and it's a really good question, Isabel. And basically, the question is, what does deposit down straight away mean? Acceptance or offer?
It is more related to the fact that you want to put the property out of the market, that you have set up the initial terms, and that you are compromising to buy the property. So as far as I see it is an acceptance, it is binding, although if there are conditions which have been included, it is subject to these conditions. And therefore, if, for example, there is a planning problem, there is a planning denounce, or the survey detects a problem with the structure, this binding document and this deposit, which was an acceptance, would be refundable to the buyers. It is the reason why we insist so much that before signing a reservation contract, the buyer can double check it with the buyer's lawyer to confirm that the wording is appropriate and that any necessary conditions are inserted. But I would say it is binding and acceptance, no?
Yeah, exactly. So in effect, what happens is you might be sat in front of an estate agent, they'll be asking you to sign a contract, and we've been in the office and received a call from you. You've previously let us know that you're interested in property, and you might be offering and hoping to sign something. So we've been sat in the office, the estate agent sent us through the contract, we've reviewed it, gone back to you, and the agent said, look, make these changes, add this, etc. And typically, what we would include is in that contract would be a statement to the effect that the property is legal, it's all registered, it's fit for habitation, it's got a license of first occupation, and there are no breaches of planning permission. And if those kind of clauses are included in the reservation contract, then we're happy for you to sign that contract. And lots of reputable estate agents, like David's estate agents here in Marbella, Jackson Grundy, they have those types of clauses in their contracts. So it wouldn't take long to sign that contract. But also, if you're coming out and you've really got your eye on a property, sometimes we get the reservation contracts sent through to us even before you've made an offer, just to review them and make sure they're happy. So that's all part of something we can do up front. Patricia, over to you.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you, Isabel, and welcome to everybody. Well, once the reservation contract is signed and the deposit has been paid, then it's our time as lawyers to request a lot of information to the estate agents or to the lawyer that represent the sellers. And basically, we're going to request the legal title from the vendors, copies of the supplies, electric, water, any other supplies. We're going to request the latest IBI receipt, which is the local town hall rates, and we're going to request contact details of the community administrator and also the minutes of the meetings that has happened during the last 3 years. With that document, what we're going to do, we're going to apply for a land search, which is a document that we obtain in English and Spanish, where we are going to see a description of the property, and we're going to see who is the registered owner of the property, if there is a mortgage or any other charges. As well, we're going to apply for a certificate from Catastro. We're going to see some plans of the property, kind of plans, and also the registered surface, and compare these two registries. This way we will know if there is any kind of discrepancy that needs to be solved before completion. We're going to check with the utilities if they are well connected, and if there are some debts. We're going to contact the town hall where the property is located to confirm if there are some pending local town hall rates or garbage tax. And if necessary, we may apply for a certificate confirming there are no breaches of planning permission. With all these documents, and especially reviewing the minutes of the community to know how the community is going, if there are some future expenses, so the client can have this knowledge beforehand. We're going to prepare a legal report that we're going to provide the buyer, and at the same time we're going to draft a private purchase contract where normally it is paid 10% less the deposit previous paid to the vendor or to the representative. In that contract, we're going to basically include the same conditions as in the reservation, but it's going to be a more committed agreement between vendor and buyer, and it's clearly advised that if the vendor withdraws from the sale for any reason, then it's obligated to refund the double. of the money is paid, and if the buyers withdraw, then everything is, of course, the deposit is it's lost and belongs to the vendor. During this time, which normally takes between 2 to 3 weeks after the reservation agreement is signed, some clients also likes to have a survey done in the property. And the survey basically, and a specialist inspect the property. Well, we discussed about surveys a couple of weeks ago. I think the seminar should be available as well for everybody that wants to have a look at it. And with the survey, and especially has a visual inspection of the property, and it's going to identify everything that needs to be fixed or needs some kind of repairs. And most importantly, it's going to give an estimation of how much it is going to cost to fix those issues, if there are any. So legal report, survey report if requested, the draft of the private purchase contract, if the buyer is happy with everybody, or for example, we may find some kind of issues that can be fixed. Those agreements we will include it in the private purchase contract, then it is signed, and then completion can happen actually when the parties agree.
Okay, thank you, Patricia. So so basically, we've got the reservation contract that takes the property off the market. You pay between 3,000 and 6,000 euros, and then the conveyancing process starts, which Patricia's talked about. What we come across, David, quite a lot is British people selling up in the UK and then buying in Spain, and they try and coordinate those. So they try and exchange contracts on their property in the UK and then exchange contracts here in Spain. And it is actually quite difficult to kind of make that simultaneous, but we do manage to achieve it. And typically our advice to them is only exchange, if you're selling a UK property, only exchange on your Spanish purchase when you've exchanged in the UK. Because in the UK, if your buyer pulls out, then basically, and you haven't exchanged contracts, then you've got no deposit. Here, if you pull out of a purchase in Spain, then you actually end up losing your deposit unless there's something wrong with the property. So yes, that's quite an interesting one. Patricia mentioned surveys, David. Typically, why do in Spain surveys aren't as common or as popular as the UK? Why do you think that is?
I mean, I would probably 9 times out of 10, I would recommend anybody to have a survey. In the UK, it's a legal requirement. If you're borrowing any money at all from the bank or building society, whether it's 10% or 90%, 95%, they will insist that you have a survey done, whether that's a house, just a mortgage valuation, or up to a full structural. So you have to have that done. Whereas in Spain, you don't. So I think you look at it, and I think a lot of people are very much guided by what their lawyer and what their estate agent tells them to. I think a lot of it depends on the age of the property. Is it in a block with 30 other very similar properties? So I think a degree of common sense comes into it in Spain, whereas you're not really allowed to use your common sense from that point of view in the UK. You're told what to do. So I think that's the main fundamental difference, Alex.
Okay, interesting, yeah. So basically, yeah, we organised a webinar a couple of weeks ago, and that is available online. Ali, thank you very much for placing the link in the chat box. And typically a survey will cost anywhere between 500 and 1,300 euros, depending on what type of survey you want. So we carry out all these checks, we then exchange contracts, and then we set a date for completion. Isabel, over to you.
Yeah, well, completion implies basically having a formal meeting at the notary office in Spain, normally the local notary, closer to where the property is or where the parties are based. And at that point, there is a signature of the sale purchase title deed, which is a buyer's title deed, and the payment of the price balance. In terms of the meeting at the notary, basically it is organized by the lawyers and the notary. The payment will be organized previously. If the buyer's lawyers are holding the funds, it will be us, the lawyers, that would arrange the payments. normally either by bank transfer or by bank check, depending on what the parties agree. Nowadays, for example, during the lockdown, it's been all the completions we have had went with the bank transfer because there was some restriction in terms of banking. So the checks were not available. There is also the calculation of any retention to be made to the vendors, such as if the vendors are non-tax residents, there will be the 3% of the sale price, and also the local rate, which is a plusvalia. This is all agreed prior to completion. So on completion date, everything is straightforward. All these arrangements, retentions, payment schedule would have been previously agreed. On completion, as I said, the parties would meet. If the buyers or the vendors are not coming personally, but the lawyers have a power of attorney, then they can complete on their behalf. That's why we recommend the power of attorney, because it's very useful if the parties cannot make it, or only one of the buyers or only one of the sellers can come, so we can sign on behalf of the other. The signature of the purchase deed will imply that the property is legally and physically transferred on to the buyer at that point. So the keys for the property will be handed over to the buyers upon the completion meeting. Therefore, the buyer can access the property. Even if the process will take a little longer because there is need to settle the taxes and update the land registry records, but from the legal point of view, the buyers become legal owners at that stage. It is therefore at this point when the utilities can be changed into the buyer's names and they can be set up as direct debit at the buyer's account. In terms of the completion arrangements, there is, of course, the insurance, the home insurance policy in case the buyers would want to set it up. It will be the time to do it. So from the day they own the property is duly protected. In terms of the property keys, if, for example, the buyers are not coming, they can be couriered to the buyer's home in the country where they live, or the lawyers can hold the keys at their offices, or the agents can do it until the buyers are coming. This is what is happening these days, because many completions we are having during the lockdown, of course, the buyers are away, so they cannot come. Therefore, we are arranging all this for them. I think those are the more essential questions about the completion. Of course, in every transaction there is some particular aspect, and in some completions there can be some complications, the last minute questions related to the payment. If, for example, the payment is agreed to be made in sterling, if both parties are based in the UK, that is a possibility. So sometimes it gets a bit stressed if there is any last minute issue, but it is the lawyers' job to organize it in advance and to ensure it is as smooth as possible.
Excellent. Thank you, Patricia. Thank you, Isabel. We've had another question in. We have seen some properties that specify that they do not have an AFO. What exactly does that mean? And what are the implications and risks of involved in buying a property without this? So on our website, if you actually go into the search part of our website, the top right of the My Law in Spain website, click on there, and we've actually got an article about DAFO, which was written by Patricia. So Patricia, perhaps you'd like to answer that question.
Thank you, Cliff, for your question. Basically, you might be located in Andalusia or close to Andalusia. We have a new regulation coming in force in 2012, kind of trying to regularize or legalize properties that were built, especially in rustic plot of lands, without having a building license in place. For those properties, the ones that could accomplish some kind of requirements of habitability, have electric supply, having drinking water, having a septic tank in place, some of them could apply for an AFO. The AFO means that the property is recognized by the town hall then the town hall will allow the property to stand and will allow some works, repairs mainly, to be done at the property. The property, it's not going to be possible to extend or do any other works other than repairs and maintenance. So having an AFO, it's important if you intend to buy a rustic property, or if you are going to sell, it is also interesting to have it in place because it's going to be more interesting for your potential clients. If you see a property that specifically says it does not have an AFO, I would suggest take each case in particular. It's not the same that a property do not have an AFO because it has not been applied for, than not have an AFO because it cannot have an AFO. It could mean that the property has been built illegally and there are some legal issues that cannot be solved at all. For example, if the plot of land where the property stands is protected land, or any other issue. So that case has been, must take and study individually. So if there is a property in particular that you are interested in buying, contact us and we will be happy to review the documents and advise you, okay?
Okay, thank you very much, Patricia. So we have another question that come through. Basically, you mentioned the importance of timing if selling a main residence in the UK and purchasing in Spain for tax purposes. Can you elaborate, please? Okay, this is a very important point because when you come to Spain and you come here to live, which means you spend at least more than 6 months a year here. That's when the trigger point to become a Spanish tax resident is 6 months, and the calendar year runs from January to December. So if you come in January, basically August, September time, you would be considered a Spanish tax resident. If you sold your house in the UK on the 1st of January and moved to Spain on the 2nd of January and made Spain your main residence, because you'd have sold your UK property in the same tax year in which you became a resident, then the Spanish tax authorities could potentially ask you for capital gains tax relating to the sale of your property. You'd have to declare that. So in effect, planning your move to Spain and when you become a resident is very, very important. We've got specialists in-house who can help you apply for residency, and we're very happy to talk to you about the process and planning when to sell the UK property and when, more importantly, really to when to become a resident. But by and large, we'd say don't become a Spanish tax resident in the same year that you unless you have to, and when you don't become a Spanish tax resident the same year that you sell your main UK residence, especially if you've made a big gain on the property. So you've owned that property for quite some time, you bought it many years ago, and it's gone up in value considerably. So just bear that in mind. Something else we mentioned surveys as other third-party service providers, but also we'd recommend, as soon as you found a property or even before, talking to a currency company, because you can sign up with a currency company. They can keep you updated about the euro pound rate. And when you found a property and agreed the purchase price, we'd recommend that you fix the euros, buy the euros then, because the property, the euro pound rate can be quite volatile and it can go up and down. So talk to a specialist foreign currency company about buying your euros and tying that in with your purchase. So we're joined by Alison Dakota. Alison specializes in mortgages. She's an independent mortgage broker. Alison, can you tell us, please, what a Spanish bank will lend nowadays and how long does it take to collect the paperwork and send to the bank for an offer in principle?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Alex, for the question. The banks are still keen to lend to non-resident clients, and they will lend up to a maximum of 70% to non-residents. Those who are not European, so if you live in Dubai or the States or whatever, they will usually go up to a maximum of 60%. And some of the banks have also limited the maximum to Brits since Brexit to 60% as well. Although having said that, I still do have banks that will go up to 70% for the British clients. Okay, so it depends on the bank. As far as timing is concerned, initially when I've had the initial contact with the client and I've seen their numbers and their personal and financial profile, what I will normally do for them is prepare a full report, so an outline of the costs and interest rates and a list of required documents. Once I've collated all of the documentation from the client, because I won't send it off to the banks until I've got the full file, then I'll send it out to the various banks. And these days, with the way they're working at the moment, with the sanitary crisis, it's still taking them about 10 working days to come back to me with an approval subject to valuation. Okay. So
Okay.
time-wise, they're taking a little bit longer than they did before, but I guess that's normal given the circumstances.
And Alison, how old can the oldest applicant be, and what's the kind of typical interest rate that is payable in Spain at the moment on a mortgage for a non-resident?
Yeah, the banks will do up to the age of 75. Wow. So a lot of clients are quite surprised at that. I mean, obviously, if you're a bit older, they will ask for proof of your pension plan, etc. If it's joint applicants, one's a bit older and one's a bit younger, then they will do an average of both ages. And if you are sort of a bit older and you need to have a longer term, we often recommend that you can include your children on the mortgage. Because then, as long as the children are obviously of working age and have an income, then we can do a longer term, and it doesn't affect their credit rating in their home country. So that's an important point, because quite often they're a bit reticent to include the children, but it won't affect their borrowing possibilities in the home country. And it's also good for succession purposes as well if you include the children on the mortgage too. And then as far as interest rates are concerned, basically in Spain you only have two products, so it's either a fixed rate or a variable rate. Fixed rates indication around about 2.6, something like that, over 20 years. Bear in mind that fixed rates in Spain are fixed for the full term of the mortgage. So if it's a 20-year mortgage, you're fixed for the full term. It's not like the UK where you would fix for 2 to 5 years initially and then look for another deal. No, here in Spain, you're fixed for the full term. And then variable rates, normally the way they do it, they will give you a fixed rate for the first 12 months, and then after that, they will use the Euribor index and put a margin on it. So at the moment, you'd be looking at on variable rates between 1.6 and 2%, something like that, on variable rate.
Okay, so fairly competitive, yeah.
Yeah, fairly competitive. Euribor's been negative since 2016, so rates are very, very low. And the outlook, I mean, especially given the economic circumstances at the moment, it is not for rates to go up. There's no reason to put them up for the moment.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Alison. So crystal ball question, house sale is completing in August. We're then flying out to Spain to rent. Taking current COVID restrictions into account, do you think we'll be able to do this by this time? Well, I actually believe and hope that the borders between Spain and the UK will open in July. We obviously can't guarantee that, but I think your potential flying out to Spain in mid-August should be possible. But obviously keep abreast of the news. As you know, the news is changing on an hourly basis. 10 days ago here in Spain, they were saying borders wouldn't open until September. Now they're being a bit more positive and saying it could be the end of June. And they're talking about possibly having air bridges in place and thermometer checks at the airport. So just keep abreast of the news. Have a look keep following our blogs. We'll be on our news site. We'll be updating everyone as soon as we have some more news about whether or not the flights will resume and whether you'll be able to come to Spain. But I'm hoping that mid-August you should be able to come here. If you do come in mid-August and you are renting, then as part of the residency process, you'll need a rental contract for at least 12 months. Okay, so just bear that in mind. Okay, So we've had another question in. Isabel, I'm going to ask you to respond to that if you don't mind. And basically says, hi there, I'd like to understand a bit more about where I stand with making an offer subject to valuation. So for example, I will have a pre-approved mortgage offer, but need to go through the whole process for full approval, and this includes evaluation. When I make an offer and put down the deposit, can it be on the basis that the valuation is subject for my mortgage offer? And I want to ensure that I don't lose my deposit.
Yeah, sure. Well, as I mentioned when we were talking about the first stage, the reservation contract should include any conditions. And these are flexible terms and conditions, so they are subject to the parties' agreement. Therefore, the parties can suggest any condition, any term that they consider necessary or appropriate. And same as it is suggested to subject a deposit to the survey being satisfactory, it could be suggested to subject the deposit to the mortgage, the valuation being approved. Now, what happens is that vendors may be reluctant to agree to that because they may say that they are going to take the property off the market for at least 10 days or a couple of weeks until the mortgage valuation and the mortgage is accepted by the bank. So that would not be good for them if they are not going to be compensated in any way. So it's true that some vendors would not be happy to accept that, although some others may be in agreement if they consider that, you know, it's worth it to keep a buyer and just hold perhaps a couple of weeks. Maybe they would suggest limiting this in time. So say you have 15 days to get your mortgage in place, otherwise there won't be, we would not be selling to you, no? But it is worth it suggesting it, and of course it would be necessary to put it in the contract if it is accepted by the vendor, just to ensure it will be clear that it is a condition and the deposit would be fully refundable if this is not achieved. In some cases, the vendors may suggest to add that the buyer would have to justify that the mortgage has been rejected. So maybe it would be necessary to provide with a letter from the bank stating that this customer has not meet the requirements to obtain this mortgage, so that it can be justified to the vendor. But it would be possible, and it would be worth it to suggest it, in my view.
Basically, you'd make, as far as if the seller accepts it, and there's a mortgage in place, or the buyer needs a mortgage, we'd always recommend subject to valuation and the mortgage offer.
It's correct.
Yeah. So just something to bear in mind as well, from a seller's point of view, a seller may not accept that, but they may say to you, okay, you need a mortgage and I'm happy to sell to you for that price, but I don't want to take the property off the market for the moment in case someone else comes along. So we have had the situation where sellers have said that and said, right, we'll crack on with your valuation and then come back to me once you've got that. And those situations do occur as well. So we've had another question through. Can you summarize all the taxes and fees involved in buying a property? So basically, if you have a look on our website, top right corner, you've got legal advice downloads, and in there, you've got a leaflet which you can download called Budgeting for Your Purchase. And we calculated that leaflet, we designed that leaflet in mind of buying a property in Andalusia for 190,000 euros. And the costs, I haven't got it down, but it's approximately 21,000 euros. So depending on whether you take out a mortgage or not, the costs of purchase range between 12 and 13%. And what you have to bear in mind is that, for example, in Andalusia, the purchase tax starts at 8% for properties up to 400,000, and then up to from 400,000 to 700,000, it's 9%, and then over 700,000, it's 10%. That's Andalusia. And then when we go over to the other regions, so we act for lots of clients buying in the Costa Blanca, purchase tax there, transfer tax is 10%. Whereas you go over to the Canaries, also very popular with our clients, transfer tax there starts at 6.5%. And if you're buying a brand new property, you don't pay transfer tax, you pay VAT, EVA. And on top of that, you'll pay AJD, which is basically stamp duty. And you're talking buying costs there of typically 11.5%, slightly less in the Canaries. So have a look at that. Have a look at that legal advice download. Thank you, Alison, for putting that in the chat box. Okay, we've got another question coming through, and I'll pass this over to you, Patricia. My wife and myself are currently living and working in the Middle East. We're not planning to move back to the UK. We're going to buy a house in Spain once the current restrictions are lifted, and eventually move there permanently. I've read many things, so I want to ask for your advice. I'm concerned that we have to pay tax on all assets once we move to Spain, even though we don't pay any taxes in the UK due to our expat status. Is this true? Is there anything we need to do, change or set up before we apply for our national insurance numbers in Spain? I presume they mean NIEs, and open our bank account. Over to you, Patricia.
Basically, in this case, we will suggest these clients to review all the assets and funds before they're coming to Spain. We work with accountants, so we can make the process of moving to Spain the best for them. Basically, once they come to Spain and they become Spanish tax residents, which means that they spend more than 183 days per year in Spain, they're going to declare and pay taxes based in the worldwide assets. It means that in Spain we have wealth tax, so they might be subject to wealth tax as well, which is over 700,000 euros for each of them, plus 300,000 euros for the main property. This client, I think they're British, although they're coming from Qatar. From other clients, non-EU citizens, there is also the possibility, which is very interesting, of the golden visa for this client that wants to come to Spain and become a Spanish residents. They can apply for the investors visa or residency for investors, and one of the possibilities is buying a property free of charges of more than 500,000 euros. With that property, they can start the application of becoming having an investor visa in Spain that also allows them to travel through the Schengen area, which is very interesting as well.
Okay, thank you, Patricia. So basically, it's all about planning your move carefully to Spain. So those British people who are selling properties in the UK, consider when best to apply for and become a Spanish tax resident. And also, if you're moving from a country outside of the EU, if you buy a property for more than 500,000 euros, you can potentially apply for and obtain the investor's golden visa. So Isabel, we also talk to our clients, completions before notaries. We also talk to our clients about Spanish wills. Can you tell me about the advantages of having a Spanish will?
Yes, of course. Well, making a Spanish will is advantageous, not only from a practical point of view, but also because if you make a will here, you can plan somehow the tax impact that the inheritance could have. You may be aware that we have inheritance taxes here, although spouses and children are almost exempted in most of the regions, but inheritance tax could have a significant impact depending on the value of the estate. So making the will help to plan that. And also, and most importantly perhaps, is the fact that if you make a will in Spain, you can make the choice of law for the law of your nationality. Therefore, your estate here will be subject to distribution according to the law of your nationality rather than according to Spanish law, which may differ from what your law of nationality states. So to put you an example, in the UK, generally there is free disposal of assets. So you could leave everything to a friend or to a charity or to whoever, while in Spain there is a limitation. We have to leave 2/3 of the estate to our children, and there is a life interest in favor of the spouse, and also the 1/3 of free disposal. But it is different, and well, of course, it has different implications if you compare it. So it makes sense if, for example, you are based in the UK, you are English national, to make the Spanish will including your choice of law for your law of nationality. Spanish wills can be signed in Spain or abroad, although we recommend signing them in Spain if possible, because it's more straightforward and it's cheaper. They have to be signed at the notary office. So it's a good occasion if you come to complete the purchase to take the chance to sign the Spanish wills after completing, and they can be signed anytime. And if there is need to change them, they can be revoked anytime. There is a specific piece of advice that I would always give to clients, and is that if they have a will in their country and they are making a new will there, just be careful not to revoke your Spanish will if you don't want to, because it's very common to find that one or the first or second clause in wills in the UK and almost in any country is something like, I hereby revoke all my former wills. And unless you specify that you don't want to revoke Spanish one, so I hereby revoke all my former wills except the one I signed in Spain, for example, you would be revoking the Spanish will, and therefore the assets in Spain would be left, well, either to be ruled under the English will or ruled under intestacy law, which would imply an additional complication when handling the probate in that case. So in conclusion, it is strongly advisable to make the wills for these reasons. Practical reasons, as executing a Spanish will is easier than executing a foreign will. And second reason, it allows you to plan the tax impact and also the law that will be ruling the distribution of the state.
Thank you, Isabel. And just bear in mind that when you sign a Spanish will before a notary, the notary holds on to the original signed version and issues what's known as a first authorized copy. And when you pass on, the notary, after you've signed the will, basically updates the central wills registry in Madrid that you've signed a Spanish will. So as in when you do depart, your relatives would come along with a death certificate, and they'd go along to the civil registry, and they'd ask for what's known as a certificate of last wishes, and that would confirm whether or not someone signed a Spanish will. So it's a very good, robust system, in that we when someone dies, we're not looking around for the will. We know that if we've got a death certificate, we go to the civil registry and we'll find out if a Spanish will was ever signed. So it's a great system. So Alison, I've got a question for you. Are the banks actually open at the moment? Are they taking applications for mortgages?
Yes, the banks are, especially now that we're in phase one, they are seeing public in the actual branches, and they've never stopped looking at mortgage applications, despite the fact that they weren't fully manned, the branches weren't fully manned. But yes, no, they're still very keen to look at mortgage applications and approving as usual, business as usual.
And one of the things we always talk about is if you do require a mortgage before to purchase a Spanish property, to talk to someone like Alison, an independent mortgage broker, before you come to Spain. Send her in as much of financial information as is necessary, so you can obtain an offer in principle, and you know how much you'll be able to borrow, and then you'll be able to set your budget accordingly. Typically, though, if Spanish banks will lend up to 70%, that means you'll need that extra 30% for the purchase price. And then typically, would you agree 15%, Alison, on top of the purchase price?
Yeah, 15%, yeah, on top of that. And obviously the banks won't finance those costs. You have to have that in cash. But what you were saying earlier about including the clauses in the contracts, etc. You're absolutely right. It makes sense for the clients to get their finances set up before they've even found the property, so that they've got the offer subject to valuation. They're in a very strong position to put in an offer when they come over and view. And I'm working on a lot of clients at the moment who obviously can't travel, but they want to get their finance set up now, with a view to when they come out in September, October, they can go straight away, find what they're looking for and put in an offer because they've got the finance all set up.
Brilliant, yeah, excellent. So it's all about preparation. Find out how much your budget is. Look for the region carefully. Sell your property in the UK if you're selling. Sell that first. Move to Spain. Rent, buy, and then become a resident. Well, from the Milo and Spain team, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. Special thanks to David Jackson from Jackson Grundy coming on talking to us about the UK market and the Spanish market. Next week, we will be joined by Mr. Andy Bridge he's the managing director of the Place in the Sun, who organise the Place in the Sun live exhibitions. And he'll be talking to us about market intelligence and what buyers are looking for on their website. And we're going to be talking about the selling process. We'll also be joined by an estate agent, James from Affinity Group here in Spain. He'll be talking to us about how you can prepare your property for sale. So if you are in the market looking to buy a property, listen in, because you can find out what buyers are up to, and you can also find out what sellers are doing to try and sell their property. If you've got any other questions, please contact us by submitting an inquiry on our website or pick up the phone. We're happy, Isabel, Patricia and I, happy to speak to you anytime about planning your move to Spain. And thank you once again from us. Thank you, Ali, for hosting the seminar for us. And we look forward to seeing you all in sunny Spain soon.